My name is Marcia Robinson, and we are recording an oral history with Mary Lou Flynn as part of the Sweet MUMories Oral History Project. This project marks the 50th anniversary of the Miami University Middletown, Ohio campus. This interview is taking place on December 9th, 2016 at the Gardner Harvey Library. Mrs. Flynn, do I have your permission and consent to proceed with this interview?
Yes, you do.
Thank you. Would you mind telling us how you came to be connected with Miami University Middletown and when that connection began?
Well, it was back in 1982 when my husband and I and our youngest daughter moved to Middletown. The first two places that my daughter and I visited was the campus and the Middletown Public Library, two very important places for us. At that time, I had a background in education for many, many years. And the next person I went to see, because I had heard about her, was Claire Easton, who was Director of Continuing Education at that time. And we had a nice conversation, and I told her I was very interested in reading because I'm an educator and I graduated from Ohio State with a degree in education, and I taught speed reading, among other things. And so speed reading became a course in continuing education that very first year that my husband and our daughter and I moved to Middletown. Then the opportunity came to apply for Director of Admission. And I applied for that position with Gene Bennett, who was, of course, the executive director at the time, and he hired me as Director of Admission at that time. And I thoroughly enjoyed that opportunity because it gave me an opportunity to not only meet lots of people, especially the young people and our traditional students, but also to get out into the community a little bit more. So that was just a fabulous opportunity for me, and I was just delighted to have been a part of that.
You talk about getting into the community. What did you learn about the community's expectations of our campus?
Well, number one, Miami University of Ohio. That was the big, brought a lot of interest to a lot of people because Miami University has a wonderful reputation. And to have a regional campus here in Middletown was just a real bonus for our community, for the population, for the young people. I mean, we're right across the street from one of the biggest high schools and many other high schools in the area. And to have to me, having Miami University Middletown was a gift to the community, a real important gift. And that was really the biggest selling point completely, was the fact that it was Miami University and it was in our community.
As you engaged with families and their students and heard stories and tours and answered questions, what were some of the themes that frequently came up during your time as Director of Admission?
Well, majorly the theme is it economical? Can I afford to come to a university with the reputation of Miami University? The fact that it's open admission gave a lot of folks an opportunity to really get their education because it was going to be reasonable in cost. Number two, the location on the bus line, easy to drive to. Parking was available. It was right in the middle, so to speak, of the community, and you couldn't miss it, passing it on either University or Brill Boulevard. And so it's the access, I think access, the fact that it was affordable, open admission. It was giving opportunities to a lot of community members who probably couldn't have continued on in higher education.
In discussing what the university had to offer, were there any support services that were really appealing to the families who came here?
Well, number one, I think we had financial aid workshops. We have, and I think it still continues, a wonderful student services office as well, with tutoring, with career planning, They were always open. You know, those offices were open right along with the hours of the university. So they weren't closed when people couldn't come after work or whatever the situation would be for an individual. And I think the staff in those two areas really got to know the students very well, and certainly helped them through some troubled times that a lot of our students might have had, whether it was for financial aid, whether it was their work schedule, childcare. We have a childcare situation here at our campus. We've had it all along. And so parents could bring their children, feel that they were safe in where they are right there on campus, and could even go up and see them during breaks or lunchtime or whatever the case may be, could check on them. So we had all of the components for the non-traditional student, the parent, as well as for the younger high school graduate that was about ready to start their college career.
When did you begin working here? What year might that have been?
Well, with Claire Easton, it was 1982, was right when we arrived, and then the following year, 1983, director of admission, and then about 4 years later, director of enrollment services, under which was financial aid, registration, admission. So I kind of advanced with the campus here as the needs started to progress a little bit more all the time.
You started here in the 1980s, so there wasn't very much of a veteran or wartime atmosphere. Did you see anything change? Were you here during 9/11 or Gulf War? Any stories you might recall about veterans' needs?
Well, back when we first started, when I started in 1982, we did have a veterans advisor here. And they would kind of rotate in. We did have a gentleman, we had a young lady that were veterans. They would come and help a veteran that was interested in continuing or starting in education, one-on-one, which I thought was marvelous. 9/11, I happened to be in Oxford at a big Ohio consular, admission consular meeting when 9/11 happened. And we had students there too, and I can remember so vividly, principals and superintendents were calling college reps, high school guidance counselors, to go to their home campuses immediately. So if there was, we had several, maybe a couple hundred high school counselors in a big meeting in Oxford, and they got their calls. Get back to your school buildings immediately because this is 9/11 has happened, and of course all the television sets all over in the student union, in all of the halls were focused on 9/11. I'll never forget that because we had closed down the meeting immediately so that high school counselors could get back to their schools. And I remember that very, very distinctly.
Was there an increase in students possibly signing up for the military after that, or?
I really can't answer that question at all. I really couldn't say. I just said it just had such a dramatic effect on all of us at the time, and whether or not it prompted young people to sign up for the military, I really can't answer that question.
Did you have a wave of students coming in as veterans from the Gulf War?
Not to my knowledge, did we. I think perhaps for Middletown, which was Armco Steel Company, was very strong during those days. Many of them probably came back to work, and they started to filter on in, but we didn't see, I could be wrong, I didn't see any particular onslaught of a lot of veterans coming back for school.
From the Gulf War?
From the Gulf War, yes.
Could you talk about changes in campaigns and methods for recruiting students?
Oh, that was the best part of it all. Recruiting was fun, a lot of hard work, but a lot of organization. We did have college fairs here at the campus. We used the gym, and we had a wonderful crew of facility and housekeeping staff that would help us get set up, spending so much extra time getting us tables moved and chairs and just hall displays. And the college counselors would come from all over the area. Not only that, even from the Cincinnati area, from Kentucky, from Indiana. And I made a great deal of many good friends. And of course, the guidance counselors at the high schools were so enthusiastic and so much help that those college fairs that we had here at campus were really a lot of fun. But they got so large that we had to move those college fairs, and we went to the Middletown Shopping Center and worked with the management there that took over, setting up tables and chairs and so forth. We had a wonderful refreshment room where the guidance counselor could come and eat. The guidance counselors would just go overboard, not only in having food arranged, but also in decorating. We seemed to always have a theme. And so we had our college fair at the at the Middletown Mall for many years. Just had a great time.
What were some of the themes?
Well, they would decorate if it happened to be in October or November with Thanksgiving. Or they'd have a hayride kind of thing. They even brought in bales of straw, and the corn stalks, the whole thing. So they would just make it so pleasant, not only for the other guidance counselors that were coming, but for our college reps too. And they always talked about coming to Middletown for a college fair because we really went overboard sometimes, I think, to make them feel welcome. It was great fun.
So at these fairs, were students and their families traveling to come to these fairs? And do you know from how far away they came?
Well, they would come definitely from the local area here around Middletown, from Lebanon and Mason and Springboro. Miamisburg, all around the area. But our college reps, as I said earlier, would come from many colleges around the surrounding states for the most part. It was great fun.
Somebody might ask, why would we help other colleges attract students? What was the benefit for Miami?
The benefit for Miami, number one, was getting the name out. We sponsored it. We told the schools that we were having it. And choice has to be there too. It would give us an opportunity for students to sign up for a tour at our campus. Of course, they didn't have to travel for very far in order to get to a top-notch education. And so it was the welcoming that I think Miami University always enhanced. Welcome, come see what we're all about. And so they would sign up at our college fair to come for our next campus visitation day, which we would have as well. So I guess it's marketing. So marketing, you normally see if you can rise above what your competition might have. You might have a little extra edge. And I think Miami Middletown had that extra edge, I really do.
The founders and the committee who drove the effort to have this campus created had in mind an institution that would serve the community both while students were acquiring technical skills, but also the liberal arts, and that the liberal arts would not be limited to students, but to the community at large. Can you speak to how that vision might have been accomplished here?
Well, visual arts, we have, and I think this continues, a very strong art program. Of course, with the onslaught of computers and graphics and that kind of thing, I think the next generation now is enjoying that kind of technology. Also, we had beautiful auditorium, Dave Finkelman Auditorium, which is brought concerts and brought programs and artists, and the students were welcome and encouraged to attend. And we have had some small theatrical kinds of attempts as well, but to perform in a wonderful auditorium like Dave Finkelman is, it just gave you an extra feel for the culture. I mean, everything shouldn't be just math and science, but the broadening of the culture and arts. We have had art exhibits here in the library at Gardner-Harvard Library, also in Johnston Hall. We've had artists who have displayed their work here, and it gives students an opportunity to see that there is arts can be incorporated in your education. So that was always the fun part of it as well.
What kept you here at Miami?
Oh my, what kept me here at Miami University? I loved my job. The staff were wonderful. And from every, even from the maintenance to the facility people, the director of a library, to your student associations, to student service, to athletics, I mean, you name it, we have it all here. We had it then, and I think it's probably enhanced a great deal over the years. So I just loved every single day. I mean, even some of the challenges were welcomed, and we had good people to problem solve, to see where we need to go. But more and more, it was, what can we do for the students? How can we expect them to succeed? Can we help them? And student services, I have to say, were wonderful, and even closed door situations where someone had to come and chat, find some direction in their life. Because with a wide range of ages of our student population, we have parents, we have some return vets, people who are concerned about how they're going to make it day to day to day. And I think our staff, you could talk to someone in admission at the window, someone in financial aid, someone at the cashier's office, and people would listen because we were small enough to be able to take the time. And students needed the time and still do need the time.
Without naming any student names, can you recall any cases where you saw someone come in as a first-year student and then maybe you've seen the transformation in that person over the years?
One particular woman comes to mind. She was a non-traditional student, worked for many years at Armco Steel, decided that education was very, very important for her. She had several children. She's a good friend yet today, and I'm so excited. She is working and should be completing her doctorate within this next year.
Did she have that vision of a doctorate when you first saw her in the admissions office?
I think she did. I really think she did. She had drive. She came from a very difficult family background to begin with. She had a very, very difficult life herself, but I tell you, she pulled herself up by her bootstraps and worked with very little money, but she's going to make it, and I'm going to be there when she gets her PhD. I'm going to be in that audience. Yep, very exciting.
Some of our interviewees from the first decade of the institution talked about the opportunity for women who suddenly found themselves unable to continue as housewives for various reasons. Did that trend continue in the 1980s and 1990s, that women just suddenly had to make a new way for themselves? Can you speak to that?
Yes. Women needed that education, and in many cases, our women always kind of stepped back to let the husbands get the degrees and the first jobs and so forth. And they were, and this is still the 80s when I started. and had children, and they were to be mothers and stay home and so forth. On occasion, a woman would have part-time job, maybe seasonal job. But I think a lot of women knew that as their lives continued, there are more expenses, there's more conflicts, there are children who want to go on to college and who need things. And I think that the opportunity, again, we had childcare, we had financial aid, confusing as it could be in many cases. There was student services, there was free tutoring. All of those services, I think a lot of women started to think, I can be a good wife, I can be a good mother, or I can be a good single mother, but I can certainly go and get my education too. And we did have visitation days here as well, and welcome community, come and see what we are. Gave them subways or fed them. You know, you always have good turnouts when you promise food. But also to get them to see that it is possible. And many times we would have our women students who were doing it all to say, you can do it too. And I think that's where more women started to come back to education. My background, I was the oldest of 6, the oldest girl, followed by 4 boys. But my mother and dad said, you are going to college from day one. So I was always prompted, encouraged to go. And I think that was part of my mission too, to let as many young women, or even a little older women, know that it can be for them too. It's not for the guys or for the young girls. It's for women of any age that want to come back.
I'd like to continue with the story about what the guys needed, the non-traditional guys. Armco Steel went through an employment change in his community. Did that happen while you were director of enrollment or admissions? And what were some of the stresses that some of those men, again without naming names, what was on their mind when they came here?
Well, I think in a way, a lot of men, even knowing what the circumstances were when there was downsizing and so forth, technology was taking over more and more. They were good breadwinners. They made good wages. They were respected in the community, and all of a sudden, things have changed, and it's hard to change. Maybe it's even more difficult for men who were breadwinners and heads of families and so forth to see that that change was going to come, or what had come. They probably were, at that point, the men that we worked with, were more frightened than anything else. You don't think macho guys would be frightened, but the future was not real positive at that point. And but we had so many things that they could grab hold of because they were familiar with: engineering technology, computer technology. Many of them did not like to take English. That was not their thing, you know, or literature or anything like that. But because education and higher education incorporates all that makes a whole person, they struggled, but they complained a lot, especially about English and writing appropriately. And I used to tell them, I said, you know, someday you're going to be a supervisor and you're going to have to write a report or an evaluation. You have got to know how to write a decent paragraph because you will be called on later to do that. And sometimes that got them over the hump. Okay, I'll do the grammar if I have to. But that's something they weren't too crazy about doing. But I think that our technologies and our business technology, all of those offerings that we had here, helped them to see that they could be reemployed and probably really enjoy their work, even if they didn't think at first they would.
Were there any particular campaign efforts or innovative efforts to get the idea of going to school at MUM planted in the minds of the community?
Well, what we did do is we would have invite elementary school classes to come, mostly 6th grade or up. Of course, now with the junior high schedule, we did start with this up to the 6th grade. And we would bring them to come by the busloads, and we would give them a presentation about higher education and so forth. And I can remember so distinctly, I asked them, how many of you have televisions in your bedrooms? And oh my gosh, most of the hands would go up, because I have a feeling about television in kids' bedrooms at that age, because they weren't reading, they weren't studying, they were in there watching television in the evening instead of doing their studies. And one day also I biked down to Smith Park and was watching football practice, the Pee Wee League football practice. And I saw dads passing their footballs to their young boys and encouraging them to run and to tackle and to whatever. And I thought to myself, I wonder how many of these dads are taking these students, their children, to the library. And so I decided we better start planting the seed a little bit earlier in these kids. So we would bring them in, come by the busload, we give them a treat, we give them a little something to take home with them, a pencil or a little item from the campus, which of course would have to have Miami University Middletown on it for sure. And then we take them on tour and show them the science labs and where the computers were in the library, and we would take them all over. And I would often ask, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the hands would go up. And most of the young boys wanted to be athletes, professional athletes, of course. But then we would talk about some of the other possibilities of careers once you got studying about it. So that was our 6th grade program, and I hope that we had planted some good seeds in those students when they came. It was great fun. We had a good time.
Were there any other innovations in communicating with the community about MUM to get attention to say, consider us?
Well, we did try the phoning. That was before the robophones and, before big banks of telephones that we knew was developing in the Ohio states, or I don't know at that time even if Miami did any phoning at all. But that was the new and coming thing, was to call. So when we would get our applications for prospective students, we decided to have a phone-a-thon, and I think we did it for several years. But I have to say that we didn't have students make the calls. We had faculty members and staff that would come and borrow an office from someone, or the faculty would use their own offices. And we had a script and a list of the names and so forth to be sure that they could get a hold of that student, or if there was a parent or someone else that answered the phone that said, well, this is Dr. So-and-so from Miami University, Middletown. We noted that Susie had indicated or had filled out an application for our campus and wanted just to say hello and see if she's been about ready to make any kinds of decisions. But we always fed everybody. We would get Subways or something. But they would come and call for us for a couple of hours from about 6 or 5:30 to about 7 o'clock. And hopefully that did plant some seeds. So I can say that we had our Miami University Middletown had its first phone-a-thon began right here at this campus.
Mary Lou, often you use the phrase planting some seeds.
Mm-hmm.
What did you hope those seeds would grow into?
Well, planting seeds, if it's that little spark, that little something in somebody's mind, a young person's mind, even a non-traditional student, hey, this is possible for me. I can do this. If they have all that they're telling us they have as far as tutoring, as far as financial aid help, which has to be a biggie, if they have career planning, if they have technologies, if I can start a 4-year degree there, will my degree from Miami University Middletown really be from Miami University of Ohio? That was a big thing because they thought coming to a regional campus was not quite the value of going to the resident campus. And we had to show them that yes, indeed, you'll be admitted. It is a Miami degree. You can go to a Miami graduation. And I often encouraged our non-traditionals to walk at graduation. I still do. They have got to have that image of themselves walking up that long walkway to the stage to get their degree from the president or the provost, to be congratulated by faculty, to be applauded. And they need to take a lot of pictures so that their children see that mom and dad accomplished what they set out to accomplish. And I still tell young people, adults that I see now, I work with a young lady who got a degree from a competitive school, and she said, "Oh, I don't know if I want to." I said, "You have got to walk. You work too hard going to night school not to walk for that degree." She said, "Well, I will if my sister will." And I said, "Get her to go the same." And they did. And it was the most wonderful experience they ever had. Dawn still talks about it today, that she walked.
Okay. Is there anything else from the culture of the first 50 years that you hope we definitely stress in the next 50 years?
Personal attention. Without a doubt, it's going to be get to know the names. Get to know them very well so that you can say hello to them in the food service or in the library or the computer lab or whatever. How are your children? Our staff back in the day always knew. And our staff in admission windows or financial aid or in the cashier, the students knew they could come up to any one of those staff members and say, "Where do I go for this? How do I handle that? I need to talk to somebody about changing majors. What do I do?" And all of our staff frontline were always willing. The phone desk, the greeting desk in Johnston Hall, people automatically go there. Where can I go for this or for that? And that's why I think personal attention every step of the way is what makes us successful here.
Is there anything else you want to add to the record?
Oh, I'll get teary if I do, but you know, I've met so many wonderful, wonderful people. The students are marvelous. I hope every one of them has reached the success that they dreamed that they would be successful at. I have to thank also the wonderful guidance counselors at the high schools that are there on the front line. They don't just counsel students on higher education or what to do in their future. Those women and men are there to help those children, and they are children yet, I don't care if they're 18 and seniors, through life's problems, because there's so many complicated issues and problems today that I didn't have when I was that age. And even over the years of my starting with Miami Middletown until I retired in 2005, that those children need all the support they can get, and those men and women in the guidance counselors' offices they've earned their halos. They really have. And it's a beautiful campus here. I am so thrilled that I had an opportunity to contribute and also to be a part of a really wonderful institution. I think Miami University Middletown is going to go a long way for a long time. Thank you.
And with that, do I have your permission to discontinue the recording?
You do. Thank you.
Thank you.